Comfy? Comfy? Are you okay? Oh, no. What's like a Kylie concert? Yeah. All right. Hello, everybody. Thank you very much for coming along tonight. My name is Chris Zaya. I head up the sales and marketing team globally for Lonely Planet. I'm based down in Melbourne, Australia, so I left 35 degrees. So just putting it in perspective, did not pack correctly. Had to buy a scarf today. It was a lot. I am very, very pleased to be kind of chairing tonight's session. Lonely Planet has done its first ever LGBTQ plus travel guide, which is absolutely fantastic. I've worked for Lonely Planet for nearly 20 years. I'm very proud to work for a very inclusive employer. I'm even more proud of working for them because we are doing a product such as this. And tonight we're going to take you on a little bit of a journey with the book's author, journalist Alicia Valenski, who is with me, and the fabulous Edinburgh advocate that runs Lighthouse Books, Mari Oliver, as well. So really, really excited to kind of kick this off. And I'm going to start with Alicia by asking her, how did you put this book together?
It's a great question.
I know, I come prepared.
Thank you so much. So essentially this book came about because I originally told my agent that I wanted to write a book called Around the World with 80 Gays. She said, no, absolutely not. However, she did like the idea that I had of interviewing people from throughout the queer community. So I did not want this to be a book that is about my experience as a traveler. I wanted it to be something where I could amplify the voices of people throughout the queer community all around the world. So that was kind of how it began. I interviewed 30 plus different people, some couples, some individuals, representing all the different letters in the acronym and then some. And really my goal was, how can I make queer travelers feel safe, seen, and celebrated all around the world? And the result is what you see in front of you today.
Fantastic. So how did you... Oh, I love it. Applause already. Come on. This group is really easy. So I'm really interested in terms of how did you find those individuals to interview, because part of the premise of this product is it's about community advocating to community. So how did you find those people?
So the annoying answer is the internet. And it's basically, I myself am a queer traveler. I follow a lot of people in the community, and that ranges from business owners such as Myri to activists to people who write their own travel content. And I just started with the people who I look to when I'm looking for recommendations. So it was an effort of essentially reaching out to people and saying, I'm doing this project. Is this something you'd be interested in speaking to me about? And for the most part, the answer was a resounding yes. People are really excited to talk about the places they live. And so it was just me building out the list of destinations, people first, which I think might have been alarming for your team at first, because we didn't start with destinations. We really started with people.
And that's what, that what makes this so interesting as a product. So why do you think, Mari, that something like the LGBT guide should exist?
Is that working at the back? Yes. You're just so beautifully wrong. I suppose for me, there's answering that as like a queer reader and then as a queer bookseller. I think as a queer bookseller, it's something we get asked for, and it's something that we have people who come to us and we want to be able to fulfill whatever their pursuit is. And so having like someone come in and be like, can I go to Madrid? Or where should I go? Or they're planning a honeymoon and they want to know where they can take their same-sex partner. And I think being able to give them something as a bookseller is such a gift. And then to be able to give myself that same thing is such a gift. Because it does literally open up the world. And I think you do such a beautiful job of that, because those of us who live in places that maybe from the outside are so impenetrable to find our queer spaces in ways that aren't just who is shiniest on the internet. This book kind of gives that gateway, and so I think it's doing that for both sides of me.
I love that answer, and I love it for a couple of reasons. And one is that there are lots of unexpected places within this book, and and I'd really be interested in terms of what you think are the most unexpected places and what you think are the most unexpected places in there, and has that changed where you want to travel to next?
So, for me, I think that there are some in here that you would expect, right? Like London, New York, those are in here and they make sense to be here. We all know that they're queer friendly. Then there are some, like Edinburgh, which I wasn't immediately aware other than Lighthouse was super queer friendly. And so, especially for me being kind of a quiet, bookish, indoor cat of a queer person, it was nice to know that I don't just need to go places for pride parades and for nightclubs. There are places I can go that are a bit more quiet and literary in my own speed. Another for me specifically, I lived in Spain for a while in the south of Spain, so I kind of understood it to be super, super Catholic and religious, and during my time there I kind of hid away the queer parts of myself in that interest. Then to learn that Madrid actually is incredibly queer friendly, and that the neighborhood of Chueca is just one place there where you can feel totally yourself and accepted. That for me was unexpected because of my own perception, which is part of why I thought it was so cool to hear from people who live places that I might not have assumed. If this book was written from my perspective, maybe that wouldn't be here. And so it's nice to have other voices in a room telling you that the places you might not have thought are accepting really are.
I've just come back from 3 days of a book stall, and so I'm not going to pick up any individual places in there because I'm going to scramble the name. But it did make me go, ooh, yes, there. That is where I, again, as a quiet queer, will go. But I do think what has been nice is having places in Edinburgh that are queer who have been surprised to be included in the book. And I think that, like, I think I'd said it to you, there's something about Edinburgh where it's like sprinkling over the gay. And so we have like real institutions like Cafe Queer and like Lavender Menace that, you know, like loud and proud, it says it on the tin, this is who we are. But I think Edinburgh has a lot of other queer spaces, and so being able, like, I think August 21 was like very surprised to be included, and it's not just like a queer space, but it's a neurodivergent friendly space. It's one of those spaces like Cafe Queer that exists at the intersection of so many of Edinburgh's like queer plus communities. And so I think it was nice to be able to be like, you might genuinely be surprised to show up in this, or like that there's 4 other bookshops mentioned, because we're everywhere, and we are certainly in Edinburgh bookshops. Yeah.
I love that answer, and I love it for a couple of reasons. Because this isn't a guide to pride, right? It's not a party book. You both mentioned safe spaces, quiet places. So what does that mean for you both when you're actually creating a product like this?
So for me, being a neurodivergent author myself, it was really important that this book be organized in such a way that if you have sensory sensitivities, if you need to be able to find a quiet space where you can decompress, that's possible. So for me, that's not just necessarily a bookshop, although that is my favorite. It's also, you know, parks and coffee houses and museums and things like that, that they don't necessarily have to be queer-owned, although that is certainly a plus, but they need to be a place that are verifiably safe for us, and that we are able to fully be ourselves, not just from the queer perspective, but if we are, you know, just neurospicy in any capacity. I wanted this book to be really intersectionally safe. I think not just through the lens of, are you a queer traveler, but are you in any way a part of a marginalized community, and will you be welcome in the space that you're headed?
And for you, what she said. I also want to understand, Mari, what do you think this means for somewhere like Edinburgh being recognised in a product like this, which is so global? You know, this is a release that goes around the world. We've seen some articles already published on how excited they are to be included in this product. What do you think it means for your home?
Bring us your gays. We're so ready. We're so ready for, I think, I have a friend who was saying, we don't have a dyke bar. And it's like, we will manifest that shit. Give us time. We will just keep calling various places a dyke bar until we have a dyke bar. And so I think there is a bit of an element of just being like, come to Edinburgh, and we will, you know, we will give you the gay that is here. And to have like a literal street map to get people to those spaces that aren't in one neighborhood, I think is really great. I think for queer businesses to be sustained and for us to be able to create authentic spaces where we can be ourselves and we can hire queer people and we can survive the way a lot of other businesses will, and do that with integrity. We need people to come and visit our spaces and use our spaces. And so I think putting Edinburgh on the map for that feels really exciting, to be like, come and find these spaces, come and buy queer, come and like get off that beaten path, and then we create those seeds of all the people that you then get to go like, I'm gonna go visit them in Madrid, or like meeting a queer bookseller in Chicago a couple of weeks ago and being like, now I have a place to stay when I'm next. So I think it opens those doors for that travel to happen both ways. If you come to us, we will come to you.
Oh, you're doing my job really, like really easily. So this is fantastic. How does that make you feel?
I feel fantastic right now. I would also say I didn't want this book to be like, this is a list of the only queer-friendly places in the world. Like, of course, there's so many that are not in this book. We could make, how many times have I said this now? We could make like 10 editions of this book, including completely different destinations every time. This iteration, though, kind of became this anthropological look at like, this is what it was like to be queer around the world in this moment in time. And for these businesses, I didn't quite think of it at the time, but it really is this time capsule of, here's a place that I felt safe in this moment, and let's hope that people continue to come to it so it can continue to exist. It becomes like self-fulfilling prophecy almost. It's delightful to be able to say, I'm sending people to spend their dollars in queer-owned businesses at queer-owned places, and that is really you doing that, because I just wrote down what you recommended in the book. So thank you. Teamwork. Yeah.
I think it's really important for us as as the world's #1 guidebook publishing brand, as well as we know how important travel dollars are. Travel dollars get reinvested back into communities, so doing this kind of advocacy is absolutely outstanding. I'd love to know if there was, Alicia, anything that kind of emerged from the content that was a surprising travel trend, or things that you thought were an interesting through line in terms of the content when you were compiling it.
Definitely. So I think what's interesting to me, you always have your hypotheses about like, oh, we gays, we love these things. It was so funny to be like, in all these destinations, people are recommending vegan restaurants. They're recommending specifically non-alcoholic places that they can go. There's so many Venn diagrams that kind of overlap when you start to think about what people are looking for when they go places. And so, of course, wanting to include things like clubs and pride, but then including, of course, we do love vegan food. We do love all these things. It was really delightful. And then I think, too, there's been more of a push for family-friendly destinations for the queer community. And I think that's so important, because those are families that often kind of get left out of the conversation. So there's one chapter in here that is family-friendly festivities, and it's specifically, where can you go if you have kids of any age? If you have family that is your parents or your children or everywhere in between. I think that that's something that has become more of a focus, and I think that's delightful. It's more inclusive for everybody.
I kind of want to pick up on that a little bit. So inclusivity versus exclusivity.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the things that isn't really featured in here is we don't talk about lots of like gay cruises and very specific things. Was that really important in terms of this content as well?
I think the goal here was not, let's segregate travel into straight friendly, queer friendly, whatever. It really was, and that's a point that we talk about in the book, is why did this book need to exist? That's the question that I got probably the most often when I was reading this. Like, why do you need gay-friendly travel recommendations? And truly that's because in our lived experience, we don't know that everyone is welcome includes us. Like, that has not always been the case. So I wanted it to feel like you could, as a queer person, go to these places and bring a straight friend if you must. Like, it'll be fine. It'll be welcome. An ally is welcome here, too. So for the most part, I didn't want it to be, these are places that are queer only, but places that are queer, designed around a queer person feeling safe and welcome there, but also anybody is welcome here. And so I think when we build from the ground up like that, if you start with the most marginalized community and you make sure that they feel comfortable and safe, everybody else benefits. So that's one thing that Aisha, who I interviewed from London, who is part of the Queer Nomads, if anyone here follows them, she was telling me, essentially, if you can make a Black trans woman feel safe in a space, everybody else benefits, because they are going to be the person who feels the least safe in most spaces. So if we can build from that and make sure that this is not just like a bunch of hot white, thin, able-bodied gays on a cruise. It's actually everybody here will feel welcome. That intersectionality was the key.
And talking on safety as well, so safety is obviously such an important part of our travels as a community that people don't actually have to, in a straight community, don't necessarily have to think through. So when choosing destinations, how does this product help people make those safe choices?
So to the same point I said earlier, these aren't the only safe places for you to travel, but it does give you a framework to begin with. So the front section of the book really leads with queer joy, but the back section is a lot of practical resources that address if you are somewhere and you feel unsafe in any way, here are global resources that you can use in case of emergency. Here are things that you might want to consider looking up before you go to a specific place. All of those resources are readily available. And then if you really don't feel safe planning your own travel, there's a big list of LGBTQ tourism agencies and travel tours that you can book and things like that. So there's a lot of resources here to kickstart your research, and I've just always felt information is power, so the more that you can do to educate yourself before you go, the better positioned you'll be.
Yeah, I think I absolutely agree with you from the bottom up. I think in an Edinburgh context, one of the sort of really frustrating, galling things of the last few years has been that Scotland was making such progress on like trans inclusion and like non-binary identities and like creating a legal framework for like our trans and non-binary siblings to be recognized and held. And the backlash started here because we were that first step forward, and I think it has been so demoralizing to see Edinburgh specifically as a space where that has been so hostile to trans women in settings that are ostensibly feminist or ostensibly queer. And so there is this moment where there's a tension between saying you are safe in these spaces, and we know that these are explicitly trans inclusive spaces, and that Edinburgh can be a very hostile place where there's a lot of stickering at the moment, and not wanting to allow them to win. Like, they don't get to decide that this is a space where trans women will not walk the streets safely, and we will build the structures that make it possible for that to happen. And I feel like there's a feedback loop of expectation and accountability of saying we are going to do that, and we're going to hold ourselves to that standard, and whether or not that's like safe rides home during the Fringe for queer people, or spaces that will fly, an inclusive pride flag, and to be loud so that we can change the conversation, reclaim those spaces that have like ebbed away in the last few years.
So I want to build on that a bit, because that's fascinating. And do you then think that a product like this, which is almost potentially as an advocate for change because of Edinburgh's inclusion? That was an answer that wasn't scripted. I think or does it start a debate? Does it start that conversation in another way?
I think it's part of a claiming. I think the way you have centered people giving that roadmap to their own spaces, and that you were seeking out people who, are across the whole, rainbow umbrella, means that I think we're celebrating a queerness that is inclusive, and that the fact that Lonely Planet, like, this is the guide. This is not a guide to where you can LGB or travel. I think is an important, it's significant in terms of maintaining progress in the conversation, when I think there's been a lot of slippage in other spaces.
Thank you. That was lovely. You touched on something that was really important in terms of the types of the rainbow community that are included in here. Do you want to, Alicia, just delve into the kind of diversity in terms of who you interviewed?
Of course. So, like I said, I really wanted this to be as inclusive and intersectional as possible. So, you will find in here people of all ages, all races, all gender and sexual identities. So, I speak to asexual activist Yasmin Benoit. I speak with trans non-binary folks in a couple of different places like Malta and Anchorage in Alaska and Puerto Vallarta. So, really tried to be as aware as possible of who I was speaking with and how their background would inform not just their recommendations, but the point of views that are, present in this book. And so I wanted to be sure that, if possible, any person who identifies as part of the queer community could pick this book up and find something that feels like representation of themselves.
You do just give great answers.
Almost like we're writers.
I love it. We know that travel is ever changing, right? Travel just does develop. What do you think the next 5 to 10 years looks like in terms of queer travellers and where we'll be going and how we'll be interacting? I mean, who would have known what was going on in the US, right? So, there's a lot of stuff but crystal ball it for us.
I think in my optimistic crystal ball.
I love that.
Thank you. If we look on the brightest end of what's possible, I think that if we continue to create resources like this that make it very clear that there is not just an audience for a book like this, but that there are travelers who are ready to spend their dollars specifically as queer people seeing the world around them, and that they're looking for accommodations where they're welcome. They're looking for airlines that are going to be welcoming. They want to feel wanted just as much as anybody else does. So I think, and I touch on this in the conclusion a bit about the future of queer travel as a whole, there is a bit of responsibility on the behalf of people who create content around travel, so Lonely Planet, but also your everyday travel influencer perhaps, or an activist, anyone who's ever going to post about like, I'm queer and I traveled to this place so you should too. There's such a responsibility to ensure that the information that you're conveying is not just factually accurate, but super transparent. Like, did somebody pay you to stay at this hotel and now you're saying I stayed at this hotel and it was great, but maybe it was only great for you because they knew that you were special and they were giving you your best treatment. The average person who visits might not have that experience. There's that side, and then on the flip side, there's a lot of responsibility in the tourism industry to educate the workers at a hotel and an airline, etc., to interact with queer travelers and to anticipate what their friction points might be and be prepared to, give them honest recommendations. So one example, when I interviewed Ed Salvato, who's been in the LGBTQ tourism industry for like 25 years, he was telling me when he goes to a concierge and says, can I go to this restaurant, is it queer friendly? And they're like, oh yeah, sure. They're thinking, well, I'm an ally, I go there, so it must be. They're not thinking, if I go there with a same-sex partner and we're holding hands or cuddling or kissing, are we going to not even just get weird looks, but could we be harassed? Could we be asked to leave? Could we be denied entry? So there's a lot of responsibility to understand that when you tell somebody a recommendation, you're kind of responsible for what's going to happen to them when they follow that recommendation. So just really taking that responsibility seriously. I think that is so important as we move forward. So what I would like to see is better trained, more welcoming and inclusive staffs at all kinds of different resorts, etc. And then also really responsible sharing about recommendations from within the queer community, being very honest, like, I was paid to say this, I was given a free trip, I was X, Y, or Z. I just think it's so important for there to be that transparency, and I think we get to hold each other accountable to that. So that's what I hope to see more of.
I love that, because I think that's a problem for the industry overall, but it's probably amplified for our community in terms of that responsibility. I think there is quite a lot of rogueness, that's not a word, but you know what I'm saying, that's kind of out there. I'd love to know, where are you both thinking about holidaying next?
Before I jump into that question, can I give 2 cents on the last one?
I love it. Go.
So I just want to bring up like the environmental footprint and the cost of living. So I think there is a gift in this book in the fact that so many of like my queer community here will never be able to afford to go to these places, or it is the destination of a lifetime, and therefore here is a way of doing it in a way that will really feel like really, really special. So I think travel over the next 5 to 10 years in an environment where our most vulnerable are ever poorer and our queer communities are ever poorer, like the pink strong, but also that intersection is there, and I think that affordable travel or making travel accessible in other ways is going to be a necessity if we want to get anywhere. But we can, window shop with books like this. And when there's climate, like I think there was a reckoning with climate change and environmental catastrophe, and we know how much the travel sector will overlap on that. And so I think an awareness of what our carbon footprint is, and going into these spaces that they also feel that responsibility, and that we're not sinking here, but the effects of our travel industry are, there are places that will no longer exist in 10, 15 years, and villages that are being swallowed by a desert, and they have queer people in them too. And so I do think that part of our shifting conversation around travel is the sense of we are everywhere, and that means showing up for each other everywhere, and that means taking seriously our responsibility to travel as environmentally consciously as we can.
I also want to put on that too, because I think that's an excellent response, because I think one of the things that I'm constantly banging on about is that reinvestment in local communities. So that means it's even more important for us to spend in these places, because we know that gets reinvested in staff, in supporting other businesses. We know that we're really great advocates on that. So many destinations completely reliant upon travel dollars. So we know how important that is to their local economies as well. So it's about making smart choices when we go into places, and that's what I think this book does so beautifully as well. I do want to go back to that. Where are you going to be traveling to next?
Myri's not going anywhere, is what she's telling me by handing me this mic.
Alicia, that's what I heard.
That's what I heard.
That's what
I mean, to the point of being environmentally friendly and considering the impact of your travel, I think one thing I really wanted to make sure happened in this book was you can get somewhere without needing to board a plane. You can get somewhere without having to take, God willing, any cruises anywhere. Not my vibe. But
not mine either.
right. I think for the most part you could drive. You could in some cases cycle. So for us, we live in Amsterdam. I'm sure that there are places that I could cycle to, or that we could take the train. There are so many options in that, like, most continents are present here, which is great. The other consideration for me for where I'm going to travel next is, what's the next book gonna be? If I'm gonna write the neurodivergent travel
Did
guide.
you hear that? That was a plug for the second edition already, man. Come on.
Exactly. So
I love it.
thank you. I do think, though, for me, I would really like to get to Malta. That was one of the destinations in
Me
this
too.
book.
We should go together.
Perfect.
Let's do that.
No cruises, though.
No
No,
cruises.
absolutely not. Great. Anything for you?
How to follow that double act. I will not be going anywhere generally, but I will, at the end of April, I do actually get to go to Berlin for 4 days under the guise of seeing a newly born nephew. So I'm gonna do the queer stuff on the side when he's asleep.
As you should. I love that.
I love that too. One of the things that struck me is how giftable this product is as well. We did an event in Sydney in Australia, and the amount of people that came up and said they're buying it as a wedding present was like the most. I was like, that is not something that I thought this product was going to do, but
Right.
I am loving that. Like, it's really interesting in terms of who this is appealing to.
And as a graduation gift, I've heard now too, which is, it's like the the places you'll go, instead of like that book, you're giving them this. It's a delight. And also just that moment of a parent saying to their child, I want you to go see the world, here's how to do it safely. It's really heartwarming to see. So I love all the different applications of it, and again, more than anything for me, I love the travel tips, but I love reading people's stories. Like, even reading through, we talked about Invaluable so many times, but she's our art tour guide in Bangkok, and hearing her tell of, being an overweight child who didn't really have friends, and how drag healed her, and now she wants to pay that forward in the world. It's just those types of things that seeing that is so inspiring, but also just makes
And it's amazing.
Thank you.
Especially for the introduction to the person that would require space and everything is very important for everything. I don't know what they're I read in Edinburgh, there's a bunch of places there that I wasn't aware of. And also the index at the back with travel companies. Very important to me because I've actually decided recently to do an LGBTQ walking tour.
How
to
cool!
Edinburgh.
Oh my gosh.
On a free/PLE1 model on Fridays.
Amazing.
So basically you've given me a lot of people to message.
I'm so glad.
So are you going to be here this Friday?
Unfortunately, no. I'm heading back to Amsterdam tomorrow. But next time I'm here, I'll definitely be in touch.
But isn't that an amazing example of community, assisting community to build community? I love that. That's great.
Awesome.
There's so much stuff in there. And plus you've given me basically my last stop.
Yeah.
My last stop and recommendations. There's a bunch that I was already doing, but you just take it to the next level. Oh, cool. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
That's amazing. There's a lot of love in this room. Does anyone else want to ask the team a question?
Yes. Are there any places where we should not go?
Yes, and I do name drop them in the book. So I really led with, obviously, safety was the cornerstone of all of this. That really needed to be the foundation. So the first question I would ask is this a place where I could be fined, jailed, or quite literally murdered for being queer? So that immediately knocked out Saudi Arabia, Yemen, places like that. So those are some that I wouldn't recommend.
Would political boycott be one you I'm thinking America.
Right. So it's interesting, that is a conversation we've been having a bit internally because my next stop for this book launch tour is supposed to be in the States. As you can hear by this awful accent, I'm American. It's been really scary to watch everything that's happening, and particularly for our trans siblings in the US, it's been so demoralizing. It seems like we made so much progress and now we're going backwards. So I completely support everyone doing a travel boycott. I haven't made any decisions of my own yet. My family, most of them are still back in the States. Most of them are not super chill with the queer community, which is a big bummer. But, you know, I think that when I was writing this book, so before Trump came back in office, things were quite different. And so including destinations in the States made sense then. And I do think about it now. I'm not sure that it was the most responsible of me to include something like Austin, Texas, where Texas is such a scary place for the queer community right now. It is a very safe blue dot within a very big Red Sea. But would I recommend personally that people go there right now? I'm not so sure. So it's a tough thing to grapple with, and I want to be as honest as possible that this book was written with the best of intentions for the moment that it was written. Like, every person I spoke to lived in those destinations and gave me their input, and I trust them completely. That being said, things change, unfortunately, very quickly with authoritarian regimes, so we will see.
What I like about this is it's about informed choices. So as long as you're educated, you can then make a decision on how you want to behave. Rather than I was doing an interview back in Australia, and I was interviewing a couple of guys, and they were talking about travelling to Dubai. And it was interesting in terms of like, why did you choose that? And they then turned around and said, well, we've actually made a choice not to go now, but if we had a resource like this, we would have been probably a little bit more informed when we were choosing that destination. So I think Alicia said it earlier, which is really important, is information is power, and it's even more important for our community, I believe.
Yeah, I would say in that way, more of like sprinkling the gate. I think if you had more of this sort of content that isn't necessarily explicitly aimed at the gay and queer community, being able to pick up a travel guide and have those things flagged really easily, as you say, informed choice. One of the things I would say is the queer people in the book, the queer people in these places are still in those places. And as those environments are increasingly hostile, I think there is a place for informed choice and...
Any other questions, Mara? Do you have any other questions of us? I love it. That was great. No. I don't think. I like. We're around for a chat afterwards as well. So, if you want to.
Can I do one quick check, Mohammed? Were there any online?
All of the online questions were already asked by people in the audience. So.
We love it.
Yeah. Can I
just for the online. If you guys have queer Edinburgh recommendations that are not in the book, please do feed them back, because it would be great when we're giving the book as well. It's like, this is a beginning, but like the lovely thing about Edinburgh is we all know our own neighbourhoods and we all have our own hubs where we know, you know, that somewhere is queer where it might not be said. So like it would be, whether it's for a walking tour and sending people your way, or for anyone else, if there are queer places that are missed on this list. It is non-exhaustive list. But yeah, do come and find us and flag them.
Please and thank you.
I just want to say a huge thank you to the highly articulate and very entertaining advocate of Edinburgh. Are we calling you that?
She runs Lighthouse.
Oh, she runs Lighthouse.
Yeah.
I got that really wrong to start with, so that's where that comes from. Mari Oliver and wonderful author Alicia Valenski. I'd like to thank them very much for this.
Thank you to Chris Zaya for being a wonderful moderator.
You're welcome. And we're around to have a chat later, and I think we want to get stuck into canapes and prosecco, don't we? Yeah, come on.
Before we get stuck, if you
Sure.
can hold your seats for just 1 second, and Alicia and I are going to make our way out, and then we will come back and